Oye Belterlowda y Inyalowda. Today we are counting down my top 10 deaths from the Expanse novels. I wish I didn't love top 10 lists, but I do. I always have, I always will. My friends and I are always, making them and comparing them on the group chat and stuff. I'm like John Cusack from High Fidelity, but not as cool. I'll be doing a separate list for kills next, but these are the deaths that I found most impactful, either emotionally or narratively or both, as well as the nature/physical action of their death. That's the criteria I'm going for. And remember, this is a completely subjective list, folks. Obviously, spoilers for the whole series too, so if you haven't read them, get the fuck out of here. What are you still doing hanging around these parts? And for those that have, let's take a lamenting stroll down memory lane, shall we? Oh, and please stick around to the end of the video for I have something to ask you regarding my channel's future and video structure. And also a quick side note, I'd like to apologise for any barking or shouting or fireworks you might hear. It's Chinese New Year at the moment, and it lasts 3 to 6 years apparently. And I can't wait for a moment of silence anymore. It's just not going to come, and I want to get this video done and recorded, so I'll just do my best to try and drown it out with background music. Right, firstly we have some honourable mentions. We have the crew of the Cant, which was nuked by Protogen. The innocent civilian crew of the Canterbury lost their lives in a conspiracy to start a war between the inner planets and yet were forever immortalised by the belt. Remember the Cant. We have the crew of the Donager, who was self-destructed, and although the Donager proved its battle prowess against 6 never-before-seen Protogen stealth ships, Captain Yao self-destructed the ship in order to prevent the boarders from getting to the CIC, the Combat Information Center for you noobs. We have Katoa, who was experimented on by Dr. Strickland. Katoa Merton was a young boy, the son of Illis first settlers Bazia and Lucia, and a friend of Mei Meng's. He had the same genetic disorder as her and therefore was kidnapped and experimented on by Strickland and Protogen, killing him in the process. He was found dead by Holden and Prax. The saddest part is that the Merton family chose to leave Ganymede assuming he was dead, and it haunted them forever. Next we have Ren, who was murdered by Melba. Ren was a decent bloke who treated Melba with respect all the way up into his death, and his death was necessary for her to continue along her journey, and it's the one that really broke Clarissa's spirit and haunted her all her life, all the way up until she joins him. We have Samara Rosenberg, who was executed by Ashford. Close friends with Naomi Nagata and also Michio Par's girlfriend, Sam was chief engineer on the Behemoth during the Slow Zone incident. She took sides with Holden during the coup and was shot in the head by Ashford when he realised she was purposely stalling. We have Bull, Carlos, what was his name? Carlos D.Y. Backer? Nickname Bull, we're just going to call him Bull, I can't remember. Bull was a really cool character who sacrificed himself during the Slow Zone incident. So originally Bull was like number 9 on my list, but I just could not write the entry at all. It just kept sounding like a friggin' Wikipedia entry and not sounding, it wasn't something from the heart. And I realised my nostalgia goggles are on. Maybe if I read it again it would have the same impact it once did, but I know Bull is a bit of a fan favourite too, but I have to be honest with myself, don't I? Bull blew himself up in order to try and take out the Martian armor-wearing belters and buy Holden and Naomi time. His sacrifice helped save humanity. We have Salvatore, or Salvatore, I'm not sure you want to pronounce that. He was killed by the unknown aggressors. So in the epilogue of Nemesis Games, it reveals how Duarte was behind everything and is a big oh shit what the fuck moment that is then topped off by an even bigger oh shit what the fuck moment when we get our first encounter with the unknown aggressors. This would have made the list due to both the nature and the timing, but there's a similar, more satisfying death to take its place. I bet you can guess what it is. Evans and Oksana, killed in the Battle of Titan. A sad loss for Michio Par, who learns of her husband and wife's death while in recovery, but, she's got more than most, so it's not exactly the end of the world, is it? Santiago Gilly Singh is one of the easiest to hate characters in the whole series, at least in my opinion, and to see him taken out by his own people was incredibly rewarding and a display of Laconia's weird take on honor. Fuck that arrogant brainwash idiot, I fucking hate that guy. And of course we have Badass Sarala herself. So Tiamat's wrath opens with the heartbreaking news of Christian Avasarala's death. The legend died in her sleep after a long life. To be honest, I was surprised she was still alive in the previous book after the 30-year time jump, so it's not exactly a shock, but nevertheless saddening. What a legend. Right, so let's knock the list out, shall we? This official James S.A. Corey signed off Best Expanse Deaths list, the only one on the internet, I'm sure. Coming in at number 10 is the demise of Timothy, aka Amos Bad Boy Burton. I wanted to put this higher on the list, but at the end of the day, the strange dogs did bring Amos back, which I couldn't be more thankful for. Amos had been hiding out in a cave on Laconia, sent there with a pocket nuke to try and save Holden, and if not, blow the fuckers to high heavens. But due to his newly formed friendship with Teresa, I don't think he was ever going to go through with it. After Illich and some soldiers track Teresa to his cave, Amos knows the score and tries to take them out anyway, but is shot to death in the process. Honestly, when the shootout in Timmy's cave went down, I was in shock. I was like, no! I was like, what? Is that me? What? Listen to me, I'm still in bloody shock about it. I just couldn't believe how they'd done my boy like that, you know. We know that if Amos ever did die, he deserves a proper badass death. And, you know, considering the situation, he does go out like a boss, but my gosh, the speed and intensity and the description of the top half of his head being blown clean off was fucking insane the first time I read it. Insane. But as I said, his resurrection, while an awesome and interesting way to go, adding a whole new layer to his character and the world building, kind of undermines his death a little bit, and, you know, it did give me a massive sigh of relief, so that is why he's number 10. Next up at number 9 is the Investigator, otherwise known as Proto Miller. I did briefly touch upon this in my Cybola Burn video already, but this was just always one of my favourite moments in the whole series, because like Holden, I had to say a final farewell to Miller, who is one of my favourite characters. There's an extra layer there of tragedy, because Holden didn't get a last face-to-face with him as he left to deal with Murtry, and after Elvie puts the egg into the magic bullet, we don't hear or see from Miller again, and Holden is left eulogised into thin air. After Holden puts the last polyp of protomolecule into a torpedo, he stops at the cargo bay door and puts his hand on the missile, looking down at the recovering planet. And fuck it, I'm just going to read this one straight from the book because I love this bit. That's you, man. That's the second world you've saved. And once again, we have nothing to offer you in return. I kind of wish I'd been nicer to you. He laughed at himself because he could almost hear the old detective in his head saying, you could have also had my Viking funeral not be all about how you feel. Right, see you on the other side. Holden didn't believe in another side. Nothing after death but infinite black. Or he hadn't, anyway. Sure, out of control alien technology might be involved, but maybe, just maybe, sometimes there was something else. Goodbye, my friend. And suddenly, my vision is becoming blurry. Next in at number 8 is the Butcher of Anderson Station himself. Fred Johnson was a legend, and his death is a testament to the amount of effort and responsibility he took on in order to help out those he once considered his enemies. No sleep, jacked up on pills, and the weight on his shoulders from being arguably the only person keeping the rest of the Inners from writing off the belt completely. Fred Johnson suffered from a stroke during the Rossi-Pella battle. Now, the battle itself was so tense, and it was almost impossible to imagine the Rossi making it out alive, and yet they do. But before you can throw your hands up in the air in celebration, oh yeah, the authors ripped the rug right out from under us with a realistic and tragic death. From like day one, book one, the authors have set up the idea that traveling at such velocities and speeds can fucking fuck you up and kill you. And I apologise if I'm forgetting any characters who did die that way, but the only one I remember, at least of importance anyway, was Frederick Lucius Johnson. It might seem like an unceremonious death for such an important character, but it was both grounded and shocking, and it certainly made me go, huh? At number 7, I've put Marco Fuckface Inaros. No one deserves death in this series more than... Okay, fine, maybe one person definitely deserves it more, but Marco is far more hateable a character than Duarte. Everyone in the system, everyone deserved to kill this arrogant cocksucker, and while it would have been nice to have him tied to a chair and tortured one by the family and friends of all his victims, Lady Vengeance style, in my eyes there is only 2 people who could have killed him that I would have deemed truly satisfying, and they are Philip and Naomi. Holden for sure is a runner-up, but as narratively they are kind of arch-enemies, despite never having actually met or spoke to each other, but they are protagonist and antagonist, at least for book 5 and 6. But very pleasingly, it was Naomi who cut the Free Navy's head off. As I talked about in my Babylon's Ashes video, it was the genius and irrevocable effort of Naomi Nagata who figured out why the ships were randomly being eaten by the gates and then used it against her former lover. It's also a nice thing to know that Marco, in his moment of peak arrogance, was in physical pain due to the hard burn toward Medina Station before being eaten alive / ripped apart, or whatever it is that the unknown aggressors actually do. It's kind of incomprehensible to me. But basically, Naomi sent him to fucking hell, and I loved it. Side note regarding Marco, I'm planning on eventually doing a video about what I thought of him in Season 4, but obviously and unfortunately, you'll have to wait. I'm sorry I'm not fast enough with my vids, guys. I am trying, I promise.
Shut the fuck up!
My number 6 spot goes to Maneo, or Manio if you're a twat. This one should be quick and easy to explain. So, Maneo opens the 3rd book in style, giving us not only one of the most gory deaths in the series, but also one of the most terrifying. While the UN, Martian and OPA ships wait around the ring gate, unsure of what to do, playing with their dicks, this sling-shotting, Red Bull pissing belter bad boy tries to make a name for himself by being the first through the gate, shooting at a ridiculous speed, only to be suddenly brought to a stop. The way the authors describe it, it's amazing. It's something like the time it took for the light of the sudden stop high G alert to go off is hundredths of a second, or something ridiculously fast. But Maneo was already a splat on the bulkhead. Yeah, I could just read it, but I don't always want to quote the books directly. I want to try and use my memory too. But yeah, it took me like 3 rereads to understand why the book suddenly started describing the speed of the ship's alarms. But then I was like, oh, I see. That's fucking insane, man. Holy shit. And also, I always thought it meant he was thrown out of his seat and splattered like the little alien at the start of Men in Black, but the show depicted it far more accurately. I mean, they absolutely nailed it. He literally just gets instantly fucking mulched by the deceleration. It's amazing. From both book and show, I'll never forget that shit. The reason I consider this a death and not a kill, other than the obvious fact that he wasn't murdered, comes down to the narrative impact on the story, as Maneo was the belter that opened the gates, as well as the sheer display of unfathomable power possessed by the ring builders and their technology. The number 5 spot is going to another insane death, and that is of Paolo I've Got No Empathy Cortazar. Similar to Maneo's death, Cortazar's death is not only gory as fuck, but terrifying in what it could mean for the future, and also kind of hard to comprehend. Now, while it would be easy to list this as a kill, the narrative ramifications behind the action, I think, are special. So, as we know, Duarte, in his selfish desire to become immortal, don't be mistaken, guys, it is absolutely selfish, deluded, god-complex behaviour, has started developing new protomolecule-fueled powers, which is scary enough. But when the unknown aggressors attack, Duarte is left in a vegetable-like state, seemingly unreachable. He just sits around, farting and making stupid faces. It's kind of fucked up and hilarious. After Teresa learns of Cortazar's plan to kill and experiment on her, she pleads with the crippled body that was once the High Consul to come back to life and protect her. Despite no real reaction to his daughter, apparently Duarte was listening, because later on in the book, during an Elvi chapter, when she, Treo, Colonel Illick and Cortazar are trying to scan the High Consul, he suddenly awakens with a focus he had not displayed since his fall, walks right over to the mad scientist and just kills him with one simple hand movement. What actually happens is fucking insane and kind of hard to fathom, so I will definitely read this one from the book. He moved his hand in a soft gesture like he was fanning away smoke, and Cortazar's chest bloomed out at the back. It was so slow, so gentle that Elvi couldn't understand what she was seeing, not at first. It was as if Cortazar were an image projected on mist, and the mist was being blown away. Nothingness swirled through his chest, his face, and behind him, floating on the air, spirals of red and pink, grey and white, as ornate and beautiful as ink dropped into water. The air filled with the smell of iron, of blood. Cortazar sat on the floor, his legs folding under him, and then slumped to the side with a long, wet exhalation. The left half of his head was missing from the jaw to the crown. His heart was still trying to beat in the open theatre of his ribs, but the man was gone. Holy fucking shit, how mad is that? It's as if It's as if Duarte was looking at him through some intergalactic cosmic dating app and just fucking swiped left. It's an utterly fascinating death and comes out of nowhere. LV and the rest slowly leave the room in silence, pale and shaking and as confused as I was reading it. And then it's topped off by a hilarious exchange of words which ends with Illick recommending they just shoot him. Admiral Trejo that is, takes out his pistol and holds it out to him and says, "If you're so sure that it will kill him, be my guest." Holy fuck, I can't wait for the next book. My number 4 spot goes to Juliet Andromeda Mao. So while we may not have known her for long and not on too much of a personal level, Julie Mao's death was incredibly vital to the story and unforgettable in both imagery and narrative to anyone with a heart and conscience. She left her home and family because there were people out there that needed help and she felt obliged to give it to them, especially since her father was one of the oppressors. It's just such tragedy for her, for her father, for Miller, and arguably all of humanity. The protomolecule could have died with the Anubis, and Protogen's plan to infect Eros Station would never have come to pass if she hadn't brought the infection to Eros. The only protomolecule samples left were aboard the Anubis, and only Julie knew its location. Of course, bless her, she had no way of understanding the severity of the infection and proceeded with her plan to hide out and reunite with the OPA. Over the next few weeks, she slowly succumbed to the protomolecule, eventually dying alone, confused and in pain as the infection spread through her and out of her onto the station itself. It can be a little tricky to understand, for me anyway, but since the earlier books and the show are kind of mixed in my head now, as well as, going from memory and different understandings and explanations. But my take is that Julie's willpower and personality was so strong. I mean, it was strong enough for Miller to fall in love with her without them ever even meeting, that the protomolecule had a different reaction to her compared to everyone else, and not only did it claim her as a seed crystal for its expansion, but also failed to take full control, and her final thoughts of home and the Razorback were so powerful that they imprinted onto the protomolecule, and it began to shape its development and its behaviour around her guidance. Like, it turned a fucking rock into a spaceship, guys. And of course, Protogen found her body after Miller and the Rossi crew did, and then they used her contaminated blood to begin infecting people, as many people on Eros as they can, before blasting them with radiation, and so on and so forth. We know the story. Without Julie, there'd be no Ringgates, no Behemoth, no Eyeless, no Free Navy, no Laconia, no unknown aggressors. I mean, yeah, they'd still exist, but, don't ruin my flow, yo. Venus wouldn't be a dead planet, Mars would still be trying to terraform, Holden wouldn't have cancer, Protogen would have failed, and most importantly, the Mormons would not be pissed off. I'm just kidding, of course. Most importantly, Miller would still be alive. Anyway, speaking of Mao women, I'm giving my number 3 spot to my girl, Peaches. Clarissa Mao, like her older sister, is one of the more tragic characters in the series, and actually ended up being one of my favourites by the time her death came. After the time jump in Book 7, we learn that Clarissa is slowly dying, succumbing to the black market combat implant she had installed all those years ago. It's terrible to hear and terrible to read, as Amos is internally going mental at the thought that she is most likely to die in hiding with the rest of the underground and not on the Rocinante with her family. During the climactic insurrection on Medina Station, Claire and Naomi, along with the dumb-ass fucking traitor wanker Jordao, are on a mission to deactivate/sabotage Medina's sensor array, but are suddenly ambushed by 5 Laconian security guards who quickly throw them on the floor and begin trying to arrest them. Naomi tries to talk her way out of it, but the guards already know everything since Jordao, the bastard, has already sold them out. Naomi looks over to Clarissa. If they fail, the whole mission fails and Laconia wins, and that is worth dying to prevent. Naomi is out of options, but Claire always has the one. She activates her implants one last time. This time it hurts. It never used to hurt, but now it does. The shit flows through her body, and as usual, time slows down. She throws the guy off of her back, dislocating her arm in the process, and begins to jump around the room, taking these motherfuckers out. She had spent so long nurturing her fragility that now using the last of her life force feels great. She breaks one dude's face with her knee before snapping the neck and spine of another. She recites her words of power in her mind. I have killed, but I am not a killer. She steals the dead guy's gun and starts shooting the rest. She hits one in the face, one in the teeth, one in the throat, and one in the torso. Finally, she puts a bullet in Jordal's traitorous belly and head before she falls to the floor. She took a bullet in her ribs and one in her leg, and as the shit in her system wears off, she lies on the floor dying. She just took out like 6 guys in the space of seconds in an awesome display of CQC. Naomi cradles her longtime friend, trying to keep her awake. Claire hallucinates and sees Ren, signifying forgiveness and her acceptance of the end of her journey, before saying, "I'm a monster." A tearful Naomi tells her she's not a monster, but Naomi misunderstood. Clarissa was never a monster because she was afraid, and now in her moment of death she is brave and ready, and unlike when she thought she was going to die fighting the crew of the Azure Dragon, she is remorseless and content with not having to explain her words to Naomi. Fuck it, she thinks to herself. Some things you take to your grave. She closes her eyes and dies right there. Excellent. Which leads us to our number 2 spot, Josephus Miller. I fell in love with Miller immediately, probably because I'm a huge Tom Jane fan and he's just so perfectly cast. You know, he's like a bad virus, I can't get rid of him. In a way, I kind of spoiled it for myself because after season 1, when I had ordered the first book and I was looking into the series, I saw that he only had POV chapters in Leviathan Wakes, and I was like, no, he's gonna die, ain't he? He's definitely gonna die. Like that's of course gonna be his arc, and yet that didn't lessen the blow whatsoever. Miller's death is so perfectly beautiful and satisfying and cleverly designed to give us a little taste of him posthumously later on. I swear it's Ned Stark all over again, like, because me and my missus, my best friends were just, me a little bit, but no, not me a little bit, because I read the books when I talk about. My friends and my missus were just not convinced he was dead. Like, no, he's going to come back, And unlike Rocksteady/Warner Bros., I wasn't chatting shit when I said, no, he's dead, he's definitely dead. Because as much as we don't want to admit it, the investigator/proto-Miller isn't Miller. It's the proto-molecule using his form. Anyway, neither here or there, let's get to his death. So throughout Leviathan Wakes, Miller has been trying to find Julie Mao. At first because he was being paid to, but then finding her became his whole life, his mission. When he found her dead in the Blue Falcon, I'm calling it the Blue Falcon by the way because the hotel was unnamed in the book, Miller was broken. He tries to stay hard, but a gentle, comforting touch would have shattered him into pieces. So after half a book of adventures with the Rocinante's crew, Miller returns to Eros, and while making his way through, comes to the realization that Julie's voice, which he hears on the PA system, unlike his hallucinations, is very much real, and then sets off to find her, which takes him a good, 32 hours? When he eventually finds her in the hospital, not in the hotel like in the show, she gets moved to hospital by Protogen in the book, we are treated to a truly unforgettable and touching scene. The show did a really damn good job, an accurate job as well, adapting this scene, but they changed the aesthetic to make it more beautiful and dreamlike, which I do like, and I don't really prefer one or the other. I think they're both great versions for other different reasons. Julie, now the seed crystal of Eros, has evolved beyond human form, her legs lost under a cover of alien filament. The spikes that protruded from her body have grown out and attached to the station, and her hair has become, like in the show, a massive fairy tale-like cushion. Miller thinks of her as a mermaid who has exchanged her fins for a space station. He wakes her up and introduces himself, calms her down, and then gives her the hand terminal to hold while he takes his suit off, letting the proto-molecule take him. But he doesn't care. He found Julie and he's happy to die with her. He convinces her to head for Venus instead, based on a joke Holden made. She doesn't think she can, but he persuades her. "You're driving this bus, Julie," Miller tells her. "If they go to Earth, it will eat them too." Julie knows this, and Miller watches as she makes the decision. She is scared and confused by what the proto-molecule wants. Miller, feeling the pangs of the infection take a hold of his body, kisses her hand and tells her not to worry, they'll be fine. Eros breaks into pieces over Venus's atmosphere, and we know where things go from there. This is one of my favourite scenes in the whole series, when Miller tells Julie he was supposed to pick her up and ship her home, and she replies, "Kidnap job?" My heart fucking melts. Great death, and only one death for me can top it. And so we come to the top spot on my list. Say it with me, guys. Bobby motherfucking Draper. While people may disagree with the rest of my list, I can't imagine anyone disagreeing with this choice. Maybe Skankunt42, you know, that prick. I know you're out there somewhere, Skankunt. Bobby Draper has the most fucking epic death in the whole series for sure. One of the most epic deaths I've ever witnessed in anything, in my opinion. Bobby is easily one of the best characters in the whole series. She's hilarious, warm-hearted, brave and ballsy, intelligent and humble. Just a fucking god warrior, sex on legs, friggin' legend, man. And I'd love to share a beer with her and or let her kick the shit out of me. Anytime. So, Laconia's grip on the system is tighter than a little girl's tuna.
This is totally locked down tight like a girl's private parts who's small. Locker room talk, baby.
And the underground are growing desperate to find a way out from under their thumb. Near the start of Tiamat's wrath, Bobby, who is now captain of the Gathering Storm, the Laconian Pulsar-class ship they stole at the end of the previous book, leads a mission based on intel gathered from spies in the Laconian Navy to capture and interrogate a high-priority target aboard a Transport Union freighter that's being escorted by 2 Laconian frigates. Now, the battle is awesome, and I'll talk about that one day when I rank my favourite spaceship engagements from the books. But for now, I'll just cut to the conclusion. The Underground wins, destroying the 2 escort ships and boarding the freighter. But before they could get to their target, which is a Laconian political officer, everyone without a vac suit dies in the vacuum exposure caused by a random PDC round. Random PDC rounds, they're the fucking worst, I swear. Despite the victory, it is considered a loss due to the target's death. But so they end up taking all the supplies anyway and hiding on Callisto before the Heart of the Tempest shows up. Bobby goes through all the supplies and finds a mysterious box which turns out to be holding antimatter, the fuel source of Laconia's superweapons. The tide just turned and Bobby knows now how to win the war. When I read this, I was like, oh my god, yes. Finally, the Underground is going to get a win. I can't wait to see which part of Duarte's ass she's going to shove it up. In my heart, though, I knew it was going to come at a price, and if anyone was going to be willing to pay that price, it was Bobby. As tempting as it might be to use the antimatter on Laconia itself, the most obvious and pressing target is Laconia's flagship, the Heart of the Tempest. After the initial raid, the Tempest is redeployed from Earth towards Jupiter, where the previous battle just happened. The Underground's plan is to use the Gathering Storm to lure the flagship onto a certain flight path, so that Bobby and the Storm's chief engineer, a woman named Rini, can use an old-ass underground ship called White Crow that flies cold and therefore undetectable, to get close enough to the Tempest to fire the antimatter at it. During the Sol-Laconia conflict, the Tempest was nuked, and while it basically just shrugged it off, one of its sensor arrays was damaged and left a small blind spot. They would have repaired it, but the Underground stole the supplies along with the antimatter. Once the engagement had started, a random portion of PDC rounds shreds the White Crow and kills poor Rini. As I said, random PDC rounds are the fucking worst. Bobby is left to her own devices and decides she has to physically carry the torpedo containing the antimatter out into the void and drop it on the Tempest herself. This is already epic as fuck, but it's about to get better. So she has Alex bring the storm to a stop so that the Tempest slows down too. She eyeballs the trajectory, double checks it, and lets the missile go. Now at this point she knows, and we know as the reader too, we know this is the end for her. There is no way she's escaping the blast. She has a moment of clarity and existentialism and regrets nothing. She thinks about calling Alex to say goodbye, who's been her friend for 30 years now, but decides if she's going to distract anyone, it's going to be her enemy, who just fired more torpedoes at her family. Even in her final moments, she puts others and the good of humanity before her own desire. She says thanks for everything to the universe, locks her targeting system onto the Tempest and starts burning toward it. Come on then, motherfucker, she says. You want to dance? Let's dance. The imagery is just amazing. Oh, actually, no, she wouldn't say it like that, would she? She said, come on then, you motherfucker. No, she's not. No, she's Kiwi, right? She's a Kiwi in the show. Come on then, motherfucker. You want to dance? Let's dance. Anyway, the imagery is just amazing. One tiny fish trying to take on a bloody megalodon. It reminds me of Randy Quaid in Independence Day, except if he was trying to take out the fucking Death Star. I just imagine Bobby screaming her lungs out while she fires everything she's got at the unkillable ship. Like, ah, fuck you. Awesome. After 57 seconds, she passes out of the Tempest blind spot. From Alex's POV, we see that she is immediately killed by one of the Tempest PDCs. Alex desperately wants to save her, even trying to turn the ship around and go back, but it's too late. Bobby is gone. A few moments later, the antimatter torpedo goes off in a spectacular and terrifying display of power, destruction, radiation and light. It can be seen from across the system like a temporary second sun. The heart of the Tempest, the single ship that defeated the entire combined force of Sol without breaking a sweat, the living symbol of why all resistance against Duarte and Laconia was futile, was gone, and Bobby with it. Rest in peace, you beautiful bastard. So, that's my list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know why you agree or disagree in the comments. You know, who else have I missed, who did I overhype, etc, etc. Right, so obviously it's taken me ages to get these videos out. Even a simple top 10 like this has taken me almost a week to write. You know, I'm a slow writer, what can I say? I like to take my time. I hate the idea of making a mistake. Like, if I ever said, oh, this guy did this or said this or this took place here and I was wrong about it, I swear to God I'd die inside. I try my best to make sure it's, like, double check everything, you know? And I'm also very OCD about it in that I edit while I write. Like, I can't come back to spelling mistakes. I mean, I can write a sentence and then I have to edit that sentence to make sure it's perfect. Like, it has to be perfect first time, you know? I'm very anal about it. Anyway, so my question to you guys is, do you actually care about do you care about the actual video itself, or are you just happy to listen to what I've got to say? Because if I can skip the long ass editing section of my video making, that would help me big time, basically, in getting my videos out faster. Personally, I have loads of channels that I'm subscribed to that, despite their respectable efforts, I don't actually watch. I just listen to while I'm cooking or tidying or something. Don't get me wrong, I'll give you something to look at for sure, but if you're primarily interested in what I'm saying rather than showing, then I will work with that from now on. So, yeah, please let me know. Peace out, people. Like and subscribe and comment and all the easy one-click things that can help me and this channel out. It's much appreciated. Be like Holden, guys. If there's a button, push it.